Okay, so hello again to our general students. It's been 4 weeks already, so I have another lesson for you here. Today we're looking at informative letters. So just have a quick look at the question here first. It says you have some bad news that you want to communicate to your friend, and then the three prompts that follow are say what the bad news is, explain how it will affect you, and finally ask your friend for some help. So let's first just analyze the question. Now, here you've been asked to say what the bad news is, so it would be best not to include that in the paraphrase of the question. So you have some bad news that you want to communicate to your friend, so in the first paragraph you're just going to say that, but you're not going to say what it actually is yet, because that's what you're expected to do in the second paragraph. Okay, the next prompt, explain how it will affect you. So again, that's just to do with your feelings and with the changes to your life. So there, again, when you're saying what the bad news is in the second paragraph, try not to mention too much about how this is affecting you, because again, if you put it in paragraph 2, then you don't want to have to repeat yourself in paragraph 3. So try not to cover any information in earlier paragraphs that you're required to tell in the later ones. The final paragraph then is ask your friend for some help. So again, this is just pretty straightforward, but make sure that it links back to the bad news. So it would be a bit odd to tell your bad news along here and then ask for some help on an unrelated issue. So I think just the only thing that might catch you there is that the last prompt, your help, isn't related, but it should be fine. So the first thing when analysing the question, I would want to say how here you're asked to communicate bad news. So really, just make sure that you're communicating one thing. Like if you have a list of 2 or 3 things that have happened to you and you try to include all of these in the letter, then it's going to be more difficult to develop it. So just first of all, make sure that you just choose one thing, because they haven't told you what that bad news is. You will make your life easier by deciding on just one piece of bad news that you're going to develop. The other thing that I would say then, and this, it's not necessarily going to affect your answer, but it will affect you if you choose some real bad news that has happened to you recently. Now, this could happen in the speaking test, or it could happen in the task 1 writing test like this. But let's just say, for example, that somebody in your family passed recently, and you decide that you're going to base your answer on that. Then that's going to cause an emotional response. Of course, this is going to cause you to be upset, and it's going to cause you to start thinking about this thing that's already upsetting you in your life outside the IELTS world. And I've seen this happen to students before, where they feel like they have some bad news and this is real, and that it will be easy for them to talk about it or to develop the idea because it's a real thing. But the student that I've seen do this, they'll start off fine and then get more and more emotional as they go through the test, and this kind of results in the test is no longer the thing that they're worried about. So let's just say I think like somebody passing in your family is a good example of one that you should just stay away from, because this is something that will cause too much emotion. So bad news of any description, but something that would be kind of easier for you to think about and to develop without doing this to yourself. So just to be aware that if you're going to cause yourself emotional distress during the test, it's probably a topic that you should stay away from. Okay, so next I'm just going to show you like my plan. So the first paragraph, you're just going to paraphrase this. So if you wanted, you could put in some synonyms that you're going to use. Then the bad news that I decided to focus on is that I lost my job, because I think that's an easy one that you can discuss without getting too emotional. And then I'm just going to give a little explanation of why it happened. That there's a new manager and that he decided that the company was overstaffed, and that basically that information will help me to develop the bad news. So you need about 50 words for this paragraph, for my second paragraph. So if I just say that the bad news is I lost my job, then I've responded to the prompt, but with no development, and I'm not going to get a good score if I don't develop it. The third paragraph then is responding to this prompt, explain how it will affect you. And I think it's easiest just to talk about like financial implications. I've lost my job, that means I don't have the money I need, then it's making it difficult for me to support my family. And then another thing is about spending time. And this is something that happens to quite a few people when they lose their job, is that they're a little bit lost to know what to do with themselves. So like normally they had whatever, like including time commuting, that could be like 10 hours of their day taken up every day with work, and suddenly they lose their jobs and they're not sure what to do with themselves. So I think depending on how far my development goes, I mean, I might get to 50 words just talking about money and supporting my family, but I'm going to have this extra idea here for me that when I'm writing my letter, if I see, okay, I'm quite a lot below 50 words, I'll include this point about I don't know how to spend my time. But if the paragraph goes to around 50 words already with the first 2 ideas, I'm not going to include that. So it's an idea that's relevant, but I might or might not use it. It will just depend on how my essay, on how my letter writing goes as I'm writing it later. And the final prompt then, which would be my 4th paragraph, is ask your friend for some help. So again, you're just going to make sure that the help is relevant to the bad news, which is I lost my job, and I'm going to ask my friend if there are any available jobs in his company, and if so, could he recommend me as a potential staff member or a potential hire to his boss. So that's the help I'm going to ask for. You could also have asked for like help with money. You could ask for a loan or something like that, but I think for me, I just like this one a bit easier, because I like this one a bit more, because it's easier to develop that answer as to like, okay, I want a job, you can find me a job, or are there any jobs, and could you recommend me to the boss? I think it's easier to develop this than asking for money. Okay, so let's just look at each paragraph individually then. So first paragraph, just going to paraphrase this. So I'm just writing to let you know that there's some unfortunate circumstances happening to me, whatever like that. Obviously, make sure that you're using informal language because your letter is to your friend. Paragraph 2 then, these are just like some ideas of language that I would use. So I'd probably start off the second paragraph with, unfortunately I've lost my job, or unfortunately I lost my job 3 weeks ago, and just like maybe a little bit more detail about that. Then when I talk about the new manager, I have some language like, everything had been going fine until a new manager started working there, and who decided that we were overstaffed and some people needed to be let go. Then finally, again, look, depending on whether I've reached about 50 words with these 2 bits, I would add, in a way, I understand where he was coming from, but I felt like there were other members of staff who could have been let go because they don't work as hard as me, or something like that. Third paragraph then, this is just a good phrase, this is something we would naturally say, is that this has put me in a really difficult situation, as I no longer have the money. the income that I had while I was working, and I can't support my family in the way that I wish I could. Another problem is that I don't know how to spend my time anymore, and I tend to just stay at home doing nothing a lot of the time. Okay, and the last paragraph then. So I'm going to ask my friend for available jobs. So, I normally wouldn't do this. So this is just kind of like hedging language. This is a very natural thing that we would do in English, is that you kind of present your situation or how you feel about it first, because we don't really ask for help very directly. We normally give the person an easy way for them to say no, and also kind of apologize for putting them in the situation where they may have to say no. And we find this difficult to do in English, in our Western cultures, where if somebody asks you for something, it's much easier for us to say yes than it is to say no. Therefore, when you're asking, you kind of make it easy for them to say no, but also kind of apologize for putting them in a situation. So this language here is related to this is kind of in a way, this is apologizing for asking for making the request. So I normally wouldn't do this, but I was wondering if you could check if there are any available jobs in your company at the moment. You were saying that you often take on new hires, and I was hoping that maybe you could help me with this. Then this phrase here is related to making it easy for the person to say no. So rather than just saying ask your job or recommend me to your boss for a job, you would say, if it would be at all possible, could you recommend me to your boss? So this way, if it would be at all possible, that instead of the person saying, no, I won't do that for you, they can say, oh, I'm sorry, that isn't possible. So you're kind of giving them an easy way out, and this is typical of what we would do in English. Okay, so that's pretty much my whole letter. That's what it would look like, and some of the phrases that I would use. So this here is the question that I want you to answer for me. So as always, just write your letter first, then type it up into the comments below the video, and then tomorrow I'll be making the global feedback for you guys. Okay, thank you again, and I look forward to seeing your answers.